So once again, welcome to this very, very interesting panel. We have a lot to talk about in the next 45 minutes. And without further ado, I'd like to start the discussion by opening the first round of questions, which are more on a macroeconomic level, starting with His Excellency, the Ambassador. So, Your Excellency, in what ways does the current situation, the one we're living in, affect Greece's position on the regional energy map? What is the impact on the current developments between the US and Greek relationships? And at the end of the day, what are we expecting, both in returns of, in regards to the energy sector, but also on a broader perspective, given the times of uncertainty that we live in?
Given what's happening in Ukraine, it's created a lot of aftershocks, and it's accelerated. And I'll speak, on a micro level on Greece. It's accelerated a lot of renewables, but it's also forced practically every country to delay their decarbonization goals. And not because they want to. Greece would have been out of the lignite business by next year. It was a very, very small fraction, a dwindling fraction of their energy mix. But because of Russia's actions, every country has to figure out a way to keep the lights on. Now, Greece is in much better shape than everyone else. First of all, they were top 10 country in Europe in terms of renewables. Some 52% of their electricity comes from renewables. If you look at their framework dollars from the EU and their resiliency recovery dollars from the EU, a lot of it is invested in projects that speak to renewables and energy transition and energy sustainability. So Greece was well ahead of the curve and in a much better position to deal with this crisis that has been exacerbated by Russia. Now, I think that's going to be a very different situation for most countries. I look at Bulgaria, where they were cut off, and they don't have the infrastructure that Greece has. Greece is the gateway. As a matter of fact, they're going to be very reliant on Greece to be very helpful in that country. And I think there's a lot more countries that have challenges that speak to Bulgaria. And what's very interesting is, Greece is being looked upon because of its existing infrastructure and infrastructure that's coming online, but B, I think a leadership that wants and does take leadership role in solving European problems, that the Greeks are not only playing a very substantial role in solving these problems, but they're being counted on to do so as well. Now, in terms of Greek-U.S. relations, modestly, I don't think they could be better, but we're going to make them better. This bilateral relationship understands that we can rely on each other. We can work together to solve regional problems, whether it's protecting democracy, our military-to-military ties, national security, regional security issues, regional energy issues, transitioning Greece to a regional energy hub where they are the provider for energy throughout Southeast Europe and deleverages Gazprom, or, continuing to play a role, and if even a bigger role, in fortifying NATO's Southeastern Europe flank. I was in Alexandroupoli yesterday, and that has tremendous geostrategic importance. You can literally, through Alexandroupoli and through the intermodal assets that they have, help Europe all the way north up to the Baltics in terms of supplying equipment if and when necessary. So it's essential. Suda Bay is the only deep water port in the Mediterranean the U.S. has access to that we can put an aircraft carrier in. The amount of training missions that through NATO that occur in Greece with Greece's participation is just jaw-dropping. But, the bottom line is the United States sees Greece as a very reliable partner, that they're essential in solving regional problems together that exist. And the Greek economy now is really starting to prosper. It has become a beacon in Europe. You're looking at 8%, north of 8% growth last year, 7.7% in the second quarter this year, and more to come. Who would think, as I mentioned, AWS, Microsoft, Ameresco, Deloitte, Pfizer, Cisco, and I can go on and on and on, making huge investments in the economy. And as Greece possesses a highly educated workforce, you're going to see this country continue to transition in a very dynamic 21st century economy, as well as a magnificent place to live. I've said this before, I'll say it again.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. It was a really insightful presentation, and also a very, very positive notes regarding Greece and its position both in the energy sector but also in its geopolitical role. So I'd like to move on to Minister Georgiadis, given what the ambassador has said. Minister Georgiadis, Greece and Europe in general are facing this one of the severest, if not the severest, energy and inflation crisis in decades. What I would like to ask you is the economy, and especially the energy sector, able to weather the storm? And what are means of aid as a government do you plan and are able to provide?
First of all, thank you for the invitation in this conference and with such distinguished guests. It's a great honor for me being here today and in this great school, because I have to say Diri and Piris are one of the best schools in the country, and we are very honored that they're working in the country and educating our children all these decades. Never leave a good crisis being wasted. What I mean is, there are always two ways to see a crisis. The one is to be very much afraid, in a panic, and start cursing your bad luck. The other is to find ways out to leverage the crisis on your benefit. Greece is following the second idea. Why I say that? What this energy crisis brings, the biggest energy crisis since electricity was invented, huge rises in electricity and in fossil fuels. Very bad. Inflation, pressure to our societies, political crisis. Vladimir Putin is trying to destroy European Union, their government, and weaponize energy. I have to comment that because His Excellency the Ambassador is here, just for historical reasons, that the United States of America, throughout various presidents and governments in these decades, were warning European Union that they should diversify their energy sources in order not to be under Russia's blackmail. But unfortunately, the European leadership, and especially the German leadership, didn't want to find any other way out because Russian natural gas was very cheap and they were always looking about today and never about tomorrow. Bad idea, as it was proved. But see the good news now. The energy that is being produced by fossil fuels is so expensive now that renewable energy is not only attractive for obvious green reasons and for the environment and for the responsibility we have to next generation, but suddenly they make huge economic sense. And the energy that is being produced by renewable is much cheaper than all the other sources beyond nuclear. So now there is a real need and a real interest in producing renewable energy. In this scale, Greece can play a key role. Greece, one of the great foreign investors that came to my office, I don't want to name him because maybe he don't want, told me that he thinks Greece could be the Saudi Arabia of United Kingdom of European Union of the next decades. What it means that we can produce renewable energy not only for our sources and our needs, but for exporting renewable energy to other European countries that they will need green energy for their energy sectors. And yes, this is something we can do, and the vision of the country and the vision of the government is to do. Of course, from the will to the implementation, there's a big distance. Mr. Manousakis, who is here, can say more. The real bottleneck is the grid. Renewable energy means grid. If you don't have the space in the grid, you cannot produce the renewable energy you want. So you need bigger space to your grid as fast as possible. And we have a lot of ideas. We're working a lot. We're increasing the capacity of our grid a lot. In the next years, it will be increased almost by 40%, which is a lot if you think that all the grid has been made the last 60 to 70 years. But it's not enough. And good ideas about acceleration, the license procedure, and the way we're building the grid should be implemented. And of course, the Ministry of Energy and Environment is in a good track. They have already voted a law in July about putting a timeline of 2 years in order some project to start producing energy. Either they lose their connection to the grid, and this kind of policy should be accelerated and be more strict in order to give priority to the investors that they really can build their investments, and not the ones that just seek to find other to fund their vision. Me, as Minister of Development, I would welcome everybody. But since now we have the need of prioritization, we have to be able to give priority to the people that can really start building tomorrow. And this is the main idea of the government. I think in the years to come, you will see a huge progress in the production of renewable energy in Greece. And if we continue to work in such a solid and professional way, in the next 10 years, Greece will be a total different country, and I will finish with this comment. My vision as Minister of Development and Investment is to go to that way as fast as possible, because now energy cost is a big disadvantage for the competitiveness of Greek economy. If we finish this path and the transformation, energy cost could be a huge advantage of the competitive advantage, for the Greek economy. And this will influence not only the revenues for the renewable energy companies, but the revenues throughout our economy as being more competitive. And this is something we have to go as fast as possible. My ministry will start a huge project through ESPA 21-27. We will give 700 million to SMEs to put solar plants for producing energy for their own needs as fast as possible. Through RRF and with the Ministry of Environment, we are giving huge amount of money for the same reason for industries in order to produce energy for their own needs as fast as possible. And we also give a lot of money for houses to produce renewable energy for their own energy purposes. If all these things will apply and will implement it, then after some years, Greece will be a different country.
Thank you very much, Minister Georgiadis. I really liked your comment about Greece being the Saudi Arabia, the new Saudi Arabia, and hopefully it will be a different country. But at the end of the day, money makes the world go round. So I'd like to move on to Mr. Mylonas. So, Mr. Mylonas, in the last few months, we've seen unforeseen changes to the global financial and banking sectors. So what I'd like to ask you is, in what ways does the rise in interest rates affect you, and what is the specific impact on lending, especially in the current situation?
Let me start my remarks by talking a little bit about the macro background, because banks and lending depends on many things, not just the interest rates. And I would add that in the current environment, the hit and the increase in energy prices is the most dominating effect on the economy, much more important than the rise in interest rates. And let me explain what I mean. Our estimates for the hit to the Greek economy from the rise in energy prices, a weighted average of oil and gas weighted for the usage in Greece, it's about 10% of GDP. It's about 150%, 10% of GDP hit. Okay, that's a large hit. Leverage in the Greek economy, performing loans as a percentage of GDP is 65%. Interest rates are going to go up by about 200, from minus 50 to plus 200 something. That's about 1% of GDP. So the relative weight, 10% of GDP, 1% of GDP. So in this current world of uncertainty, the energy hit is the main source of uncertainty and what will lead firms and households to wish or not to wish to invest and to borrow. Now, I will follow the line of the previous speakers and say that I'm relatively confident that the Greek economy will outperform Europe. Question is, where will Europe be? How long will be the crisis? And whoever thinks they can project what will happen in 2023 is, I think, being a bit optimistic. I think we can only look out 3-4 months. The current projections of the ECB are for petroleum prices to decline slightly, 10% over the next 12 months. Natural gas prices to remain more or less high. In that environment, they predict GDP growth in Europe of 1%. Our view at NBG is that Greece will outperform, and after a 6% growth, or 5.5% to 6% growth this year, we'll be looking at 2 to 2.5% GDP growth next year, which is a decent level of growth. That's assuming all the rest, these prices, this European GDP, etc. Lots of ifs. Okay, so I'm putting a lot of caveats on my projections. Now, in this environment, first of all, why are we going to outperform? The Greek economy has restructured itself significantly over the past 10 years. It has low leverage, it has profitable firms that are competitive and are exporting. Exports as a percent of GDP have gone from 20% to 40% of GDP, showing that they're competitive. Real estate prices are not overvalued, they're undervalued, so that's a key consideration, especially as a banker, for the economy. If you're going to be facing dropping collateral values, that's not a good condition for growth. We're facing the opposite, and I think we're going to continue to see real estate prices go up. So in this environment, what will be loan demand? Okay, I think that loan demand is going. This year was very strong. We were looking at 10% increase in corporate loan demand. That's the highest we've seen in many years. I think it'll slow. When GDP slows, loan growth slows, but it'll still be at a decent level of somewhere around 5%, in line with nominal GDP. That's a good scenario. Okay, so I think that, to sum up, we're seeing an increase in interest rates. Let's not forget we're going from negative rates to more normal rates of 2%. They're not exactly crazy rates. That's not going to be the key determinant in lending. We're going to have the RRF, which is going to contribute significantly to reducing the interest rate cost of projects. So net, we're looking at, in the baseline scenario, a scenario without an increase in new non-performing loans and decent loan demand. So this is a bit of a Goldilocks scenario. Let's see where it all goes, because every day we have new news.
Thank you very much for shaping the way of the future, and hopefully we'll see it come to pass. And I'd like to return to the core energy sector. Mr. Georgiadis paved my way for the next question, and I'm referring to Mr. Manousakis. So, Mr. Manousakis, Europe is confronted with an unprecedented energy crisis, and it poses new challenges regarding the efficiency and the smooth operation of the electrical system. So, what is the role of IPTO in this new landscape?
Indeed, and unfortunately, we are in a very deep crisis. Mr. Georgiadis before sketched the picture. I have to add that except from the inflation, the energy price crisis, we have a very dark background of an escalating climate crisis that is going on. For us, it was very important that in the summer we saw that the shortage of the water of the rivers made it impossible for German energy producers to put the coal in the factories because they used to get the coal to the factories through the rivers. So we are in an unprecedented situation. And of course, it is a European problem. We are trying as DSOs, as you saw in the European Commission guideline, which is cooked up right now in order to reduce the electricity consumption by 5% in the 3 months of the winter. They named the TSOs of the countries as responsible to try to find a way to do this. So we have a very short-term plan that we cooperate with all the competent authorities of the Greek state and also the European TSOs, the TSOs of what geographically is Europe, in order to coordinate, in order to minimize the effects of the fact that the Russian gas has in fact stopped to run to Europe, despite the fact that in Greece we still have it. So we make all these risk preparedness plans in order to minimize any kind of effects that we might face in the very near future. Now, having said that, the most important part is how we go away from the fossil fuels, as the Minister and the Ambassador said before. So we have what we call a medium-term plan, which is to increase the capacity of the grid in order to be able to introduce new renewable sources units. As the Minister said, now it is the time to take some radical steps. Let me explain with some numbers. The Greek grid will be able to have more than 28 to 29 gigawatts of renewables by the end of this decade. And the national plan, which is cooked right now, will speak about 25. So one would say, okay, it is enough. But in fact, it is not, because there are investors of the past who hold what we called the connection terms agreement of more than 10 gigawatts right now. In the past, it was not a problem because there was not this appetite of the investors. But now we have a lot of investors from Greece, but also from all over the world, big companies who have confidence in Greece that it is for their interest to invest here. So what we will do is that we will continue to accelerate the construction of grid as we have done the last 5 years, but also we will cooperate with all the authorities in order to minimize the time in order to get permissions to build the networks. And also we will try to find smart ways to increase in a very fast manner the electrical space.
Thank you very much, Mr. Manousakis, and for the insightful presentation, for the outlook regarding Greece's electrical grid. It's a crucial part. So, returning to Ambassador Tsunis, Your Excellency, during your initial statement, you highlighted and mentioned a lot about the great position that the US and Greek relationships are right now. So what I'd like to ask you is how and in what ways are the United States willing to aid Europe in general, but also Greece in particular in tackling the unforeseen energy crisis? And are there specific initiative plans for the next crucial months?
There are, and the United States is helping out a lot. I think a lot of people have spoken about Russian capacity and production and Saudi capacity and production. The United States is producing 16.5 million barrels of oil a day, and we almost have an unlimited capacity to produce LNG. Getting it here is a different story. To export it and to put it on a ship and get it here, we need more slots in Adonis. Now, Adonis was expanded substantially, and thank goodness that it was. And Manos spoke about medium-term plans to increase the intake capacity. So there's short-term plans that exist. The Bulgarian interconnector is coming online. The medium-term plans are 2 FSRUs in Alexandroupoli, 1 in Corinth. There's a couple of others now that are percolating that I don't want to mention. And then longer-term plans is interconnectors from North Africa, Middle East. Once all those things are completed, this problem goes away. But in the meantime, you are going to have several very tough winters in Europe. So the energy crisis is going to lead to a food scarcity crisis. There are fertilizer plants that have closed in Europe. That speaks to a reduction of crop yields. The Black Sea is mined. Russia is not allowing grain to come out of Ukraine. That compounds this. So keep in mind, you have a humanitarian crisis, you have an energy scarcity crisis, you have a food scarcity crisis. And as people's electrical bids are going through the roof at an unsustainable level, and the government here is doing a very good job in subsidizing them, no one has unlimited capacity there. Mr. Mylonas spoke about rising interest rates as well and inflation. There is a crescendo here that is going to impact growth. But the United States is helping as much as they can. The amount of LNG that we're shipping to Europe has increased substantially, and we're doing all we can. I was up in the Thessaloniki International Fair, and I can't tell you how many people were there from the Department of Energy, from the State Department, from the National Security Council, trying to figure out solutions to these European problems. In terms of, I'm not one that is looking to look into the past or how we got here. We're here, and as the minister says, we have to take advantage of this. We will get through this. It is going to be very difficult. On top of this, you have Russia that is behind the scenes in asymmetric warfare, trying to destabilize governments. I want to repeat this. In addition to creating this humanitarian crisis and energy crisis, we have seen substantial evidence that the Russian government is trying to influence elections and trying to destabilize governments in Europe. And I think that we should be very aware of this, especially as we see a lot of fake news that comes out. So this is a time, in very difficult times, to be supportive of the people that are in the chair to solve these very seminal problems. But the United States is here in solidarity, and they're doing everything they can to help. But make no mistake, this will be with us for a couple of years, especially exacerbated in the wintertime.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. And I'd like to come back to Minister Georgiadis. You made some statements in your initial presentation, but I'd like some more clarifications regarding investments and structural reforms. And these investments and reforms in the energy sector do require ample liquidity, but also acceleration of procedures. So what I'd like to ask you is, in what ways do instruments such as the RRF and the NSRF, the ESPA, contribute towards these goals? And what are the government initiatives in this direction?
First of all, I want to make some comments about what Mr. Mylonas said and the predictions of our economy for this year and for the future. 2021, we had 8.1% growth. 2022, in the first 6 months, we had 7.8. I can tell you now, since I have already seen what happened to July, August, and the first days of September, the final result of this year will be much better than any expectation we had. Even under the pressure of inflation, of energy crisis, of the war, and of the higher interest rates. The deal that yesterday was announced between Singaporean Sovereign Fund and ECOS, the biggest tourist deal after the pandemic crisis in Europe, and one of the biggest in the world, gives a real proof about the real predictions of our economy's performance the years to come. Nobody comes and spends more than $1 billion if he thinks that we're going to have a recession the years to come. He's putting $1 billion because he believes that our economy will still grow. Of course, I'm not saying that we're still going to grow with the same rhythm of today. This would be totally impossible since all the other European economy will slow down. Maybe some countries will have even a recession. Greece will slow down the rhythm also, but overall will perform very well. And I'm very optimistic about the performance of our economy the years to come. If the war stops, this will be even better. I don't know if it will, to be honest. But even under these circumstances, our economy will still grow fast. And as I said before, the renewable energy sector, and to the aspect of investments and FDIs especially, and as an energy cost and competitive advantage to our economy, will increase significantly and will start producing real results to our economy in the years to come. You have always to remember that one of the biggest problems for our economy is the commercial deficit we have, but this, more than 1/3 of it is of the fossil fuels, and as long as we start consuming lower amounts of fossil fuels and changing to renewable energy, this will impact overall to our economy and to all the figures we can have. So I would comment and recommend to the National Bank of Greece and the other banks, you can lend your money in safety with good business, don't worry, everything will end well. In a way, we were a little bit lucky because we were destroyed in 2010. It's strange. How can you be lucky if you were destroyed? But we were. Firstly, because we were bankrupt in 2010, now we have a national debt that is secured under rates that they are not being influenced by the markets. Only a small percentage of the debt, which is good. Secondly, we have restructured our economy with a lot of reforms that gave us the new structure that Mr. Mylonas referred. 2010, 20% of our GDP was exports. 2020, 40%. 2022 will be even more, maybe over 43, 44%. So our industrial production and our exports is going sky high. even in this energy cost, that it's very difficult for our industry. And the companies, the enterprises that survived through the crisis because a lot was bankrupt and destroyed, but the ones that survived are real strong enterprises now, very competitive and very capable to deal with crisis. Because they have already done it in the last decade and it was terrible, so now they can do it again. They know how to do it. So Greece, and of course overall, I have to say that, this is the biggest of all. We got this huge vaccine. The biggest advantage of our economy is the Syriza government 2015-2019. This was the vaccine against leftist ideas that were destroying the countries for many decades. This made the Greek people to be pro-American, they weren't before 2015, pro-Israel, they weren't before 2015, pro-privatization, they weren't pro-privatization before 2015. After the experience of the left governments, the public opinion shifted. They hear about Syriza, communism, left, and they go the other way around. This is very good for investments because not only the government that supports the investment, it's the people that support the investment. This is a totally new environment in Greece. We have thanked Tsipras for that forever. Many of the people of the left accused Tsipras that he destroyed the left in Greece. They're right. He destroyed the left in Greece, but this is very good for Greece. So he is something like a national hero for this reason. So leftist ideas are being destroyed forever. It's like a vaccine until a disease. So this gives us a benefit to do our job, to accelerate our privatization program, to accelerate the license procedure, to accelerate foreign direct investment, to accelerate all the things we want to do. And we're doing as a government because overall we have a prime minister who is very business-oriented. Yesterday in New York, the Prime Minister of Greece had a lot of meetings in business community in the United States in order to continue attracting foreign direct investment in Greece and do my job easier. And I want to thank him for that. So everything goes as it should. Just last news, yesterday, as an example, we had the tender for Alexandroupolis port. We had two offers from two American SIMs that they will compete each other. Since one American will win, I'm okay. I wanted the Americans to be there, to be honest, for various reasons. Your Excellency, it's not only Suda South, now we're building Suda North, which is Alexandroupolis, and we're very happy about it. There we're building FSRU. I think in Kavala we can build an FSRU. In Revithousa we already built an FSU. If you go to Revithousa now, you will see a line of 15 to 20 ships per day that are waiting to put LNG into Revithousa and then transport it throughout the country. Greece is being transformed to a gateway of LNG to the Balkans and Eastern Europe. This will be even more in the years to come. Not only the renewable, it's the energy from LNG also that gives Greece a big advantage, an economic advantage, and a political advantage. So I'm very, very optimistic. I'm sure New Democracy and Manousakis will win the elections. We'll have again a single-party government, and thank God we'll be able to finish all the transformation of Greece and our economy to a very competitive way, which something will give wealth for the next decades. Not for the next years, for the next decades, for the Greek people.
Thank you very much, Minister Georgiadis. And I'm getting back to the banks, and I'm really looking forward to what Mr. Mylonas has to say after this comment. So, Mr. Mylonas, given the urgent need to accelerate the energy transition, and we heard a lot about that during the previous comments, what is the roles that the banks are called to play in the new equation? And to be more precise, what are the challenges you face as far as funding is concerned, and how do you utilize the new instruments that have come to play, such as the RRF?
Okay, thanks for that question. Let me start with a bit of background. How we see people talk about transition. Let's try to add some numbers to that. Currently, Greece has about 55% of its energy needs coming from petroleum, 22% from natural gas, 18% from renewables, and only 5% from lignite, down from 30% 10 years ago. So major achievement there. The transition entails a double switch. First switch is the use of more electricity, substituting out for fossil fuels, for petroleum, both in terms of, mostly in transport, that's where we use most of our petroleum, as well as home heating. And the second switch is a larger share of the electricity production coming from renewables. Currently it's 40%. The old target was 60% by 2030. The new target, I think, is, you'll correct me, 70% for 2030. That's the numerical switch. Now, what does that mean in terms of actual investment? The estimates are for an increase in renewables by 150%, the productive capacity. That's 15 giga, okay, by 2030. You also need, when you have renewables, storage facilities. Our estimate's 4 to 5 giga of additional storage facilities. When your economy depends on renewables, you also need interconnections in case of volatility in weather conditions. So there is going to be additional 7 giga of interconnection, mostly with Southern Med, but with other countries as well. As was mentioned by the minister, in the transition stage, there'll be more need for natural gas, and there were all the plethora of FSRUs which are being planned. That's an additional amount of investment. And if all this happens, I don't know if we'll be a Saudi Arabia of energy, but certainly we will be a green energy hub and good chance of being a net exporter. Okay, so to the Balkan countries in the region. Price tag for all this, 30 to 35 billion until 2030. That excludes all the money necessary for switching homes to be more efficient. What's the bank's role? Okay, and you'll be surprised where I think the most important roles. The most important role of banks is to judge the viability of projects, to structure projects that work. That requires a lot of technical knowledge. This is not something that you can issue a bond. It needs bank loans. So it's the banks that will be doing this, and then you need expertise. And all the banks have to get expertise. I will say right now, I think we are far ahead of the other banks in Greece, but everyone will catch up because there's a lot of business to be done. Second, clearly, is the resources to fund, okay? There's got to be skin in the game, so the investors got to put in about 15, 20% on capital. There are other resources like the RRF, which will put in another 15, 20%, and the rest will be banks. That's a lot of funding from the banks over the next few years. This will be electrification of the grid, the interconnectivity, the renewables, the classic ones, as well as sexier renewables such as floating windmill parks, etc. The RRF is going to play a major role. And then, as I mentioned, there's a whole additional close to 30 billion that will be for increasing the efficiency of homes, making more insulation, heat pumps, etc., etc. So there's about 60 billion of investment that has to be done in the next 8 years, of which broadly half will be from the banks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mylonas. And sticking to investments, I'd like to move on to Mr. Manousakis. Mr. Manousakis, as IPTO, you deliver on time and your projects are working as planned, but you also have a very ambitious investment plan that will more than double the size of the national transmission system by 2030. And this, all the panelists said before, is a milestone to pave the way for green transition. So what I'd like to ask you is, how is it progressing, and has the energy crisis affected your planning, and in what ways?
First of all, thank you very much for the recognition that we have paced up our projects. And also I want to thank the organizers for the invitation in this very established conference. Mr. Mylonas said that he's expecting 30 billion euros of investments until 2030 in the green sector. In fact, the 5 of them are ours. So I believe we are, as the previous Minister of Energy of this government said, the biggest energy investor of the country. And we are trying to be efficient despite the fact that we are owned by 51 by the Greek state, or also because of the good cooperation we have in the statesmanship of all the government these years.
Comment.
Yes.
Sorry. Sometimes a state-owned company can have a good leadership and do the job. This is your case. It's not the common thing. It's rare.
To be honest, I agree. Thank you for the comment, but I structurally agree with what is said regardless of me. Now, let me sketch a picture of what we are trying to do in the next years in order to facilitate this infrastructure revolution that it is needed in order to facilitate the green transition of the country. Thanks to the RRF, thanks to the national funds, and thanks to the very good cooperation we have with the Greek banks, which give trust to us, we are now promoting the new project of the Southwest Cyclates. I remind to everyone that we have finalized the interconnection of the North Cyclades islands of Syros, Paros, Mykonos, Naxos, or all the flagships of our tourism. So now we have already started the Santorini Naxos. We have used already the 110 million euros of the RRF of the 165 that they are going to give us for this Southwest Cyclades interconnections. By the end of 2022, we plan to have signed the contracts for the remaining islands, Folegandros, Milos, and Serifos. The Santorini Naxos will be completed by 2023 if we will be efficient enough to overcome the evident problems that have arisen in the supply chain because of the previous COVID situation, and also the problems that arise in the contracts because of the inflation of the prices, where we think that the regulator should help us to overcome these problems. Now, except from this, we are also going well to the very big project of the HVDC Crete Attica interconnection, the first of its kind in Greece, and with a budget which exceeds 1 billion euros. We believe that it will be completed in 2024, making Crete having total energy adequacy by then. And by 2030, we have the aspiration, the ambition to have interconnected the Dodecanese and the Northern Aegean Islands via new projects with budgets amounting to more than 2.5 billion euros. So yes, we go fast. We're going well up to now. And we wanted to thank all the stakeholders of the sectors that have helped us to move towards this direction. And we believe that with smart regulatory context in the next years, the infrastructure revolution will continue as it has gone up to now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Manousakis. And although we're a bit short of time, we would like to do a third round of questions. I'd like to ask the participants to be as brief as possible, but there are a lot of things to discuss, and starting with His Excellency Ambassador. We heard Minister Georgiadis mentioning the Alexandroupolis ports and the tender. So taking advantage of that, I would like to ask you, US FDIs, and especially those aimed at the energy sector, have significantly increased during the last period. So given your experience and given your background, what is the thing that brings US companies to Greece, and in turn, what must a country do in order to accelerate this trend?
Before I answer that, I just want to make a couple of comments that I probably should have made earlier. The most significant of which was said earlier, Greece's debt profile. It goes out 18 years. The interest rate on the $260 billion on the 3 bailouts, that interest rate is 1.4%, dropping to 1.2% on average in the next 2 years. That debt profile goes out 18 years. If you look at the time value of money, it will be a lot less significant in 18 years in terms of value than it is now. And inflation is actually helping that because it's locked in for 18 years. There is no other country that I can think of that has that type of 18-year locked interest rate at well below market rates. That's going to help Greece a lot. And if you talk to the rating agencies, unless there's a major hiccup, and God knows Greece has been thrown every major hiccup it could due to outside sources, especially coronavirus and inflation and this energy crisis. Greece should return to investment grade status next year. And I think that's going to be very, very, very significant in terms of the types of entities that will be able to make investments in not only Greek debt, but other investments in Greece. In terms of what do capital allocators need to, what do they look to? What is the checklist that they look to? It's very simple and very complicated. The simple part is they go where they're wanted and they stay where they're appreciated. So they want reasonable labor laws, reasonable regulation. I'm not asking anyone to gut anything or impact the dignity of a worker, not at all. Just a sense of reasonableness and a sense of stability and transparency that they will not change on the dime. You need a judiciary that doesn't take 15 years to make a decision. I want to repeat that because it does institutional harm all over the world. You cannot have a judiciary taking 10 and 15 years to make a decision on something. That may be one of the things that we don't talk about in this country, and it's not my place. It's what I've heard from global business leaders if they have a hesitancy to invest in Greece. It would be that. You cannot invite digital nomads to come into this country and not have 5G everywhere. Now that is happening, and it needs to continue to happen. 5G is very, very important. We talked about the grid, and I agree Manos is hyper competent here. But when Microsoft is putting up $1 billion in digital storage centers, as Greece has digitalized everything and it's in the cloud, you need storage facilities. There are companies that are meeting that. It takes two things. It takes a lot of juice and it takes water to cool them down. So the electrical grid, I'm glad to see that it is increasing substantially. That is absolutely a necessity. Now, Greece is becoming a regional energy hub. Why? Location. It has the ability, and it's had the ability, not every country has a deficit. Not every country has the ability to put floating storage regasification units all over the country. I mean, Greece has a coastline that's 2/3 the size of the United States. We have the ability to do it, to hook into a pipeline system, a grid system that allows it to do it. So these are man-made resources and natural resources that make it very convenient for energy companies to invest in Greece. I spoke about location. If you look to the neighbors below it, you look at Saudi Arabia, their leader has said, I have unlimited land, I have unlimited sun, I have unlimited money. I produce 10% of the world's energy today. I'm going to produce 10% of the world's energy in 30 years. It's going to look a little different, but this is the way I can get it to European markets because there are opportunities, because people have woken up and said, I do not want to sole source my energy. I do not want to rely on an autocrat like Putin who uses it as a geostrategic tool. I want to be able to get it elsewhere. And believe me, there are a lot of people that are rooting for Greece to become this regional energy hub, so we can finally deleverage Putin in this area. And where is the U.S. helping? We have something called the Development Finance Corporation. Andy Herchowitz from that entity was in Thessaloniki with me. He was with my good friend, the minister. I can't tell you how many meetings we had with companies looking to invest in Greece in this particular sector. We have a mandate to invest in energy companies in Greece because Greece is the solution to a more regional problem here. Not caused by Greece, but Greece is becoming the solution given its location, given infrastructure that exists and is on the planning board or being built. There are a lot of reasons why capital allocators will make decisions on where to invest. I'm going to point out something that may surprise a lot of you, but it's not going to surprise my friend David, who's the president of DeRee and Pierce and such. If you want to attract U.S. companies here, we have to increase the American schools that are here. It is very difficult for me to say to someone, move operations out of London, come to Greece. It's a beautiful place to live. It's a beautiful place to work. But where are we going to send our kids to school? And if you look at the American-based schools in Thessaloniki and in Athens, they are very close to capacity. We have to make a concerted effort to expand that. And it also speaks to, an outstanding partnership, a very, very strong bilateral relationship. And I want to make it stronger because from a people-to-people tie, the Greek diaspora, in investments, tourism, education, we have 35 U.S. Universities coming to Athens in November to speak about semester abroad programs and year abroad programs in Greece, military to military ties. I mean, all across the board, the relationship between the U.S. and Greece is strengthening, and it's essential because at the end of the day, we share the same values. There's trust. We rely on each other to help solve problems. And I'm very grateful for the reception that I received in this country. It's very clear to me that overwhelmingly this country, that Greece sees its future and its national security in partnership with the United States and NATO.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. And you've really set up the stage for my next question towards Mr. Georgiadis. So, Minister, I'd like to stick to the FDI issue when foreign direct investments, including those from the United States, were at an all-time high in 2021, and at least until the second quarter of 2022 have maintained a positive momentum. So given what the ambassador said, what are your plans, the government's plans and initiative in order to facilitate and increase the FDIs despite the current market turmoil?
First of all, Pierce investment to elementary school that was happened 10 days ago, it's a good answer to your concern. One, maybe we'll need more, but I have to say it's a fantastic school. And there are very good facilities there that can help education a lot. Second, we talk a lot about our justicial system. It's not true we're not talking. It's totally the opposite. We have hired the World Bank as our advisor for the reforms we have to do in the justicial system to grow faster. I have the authority by ministerial of all the implementation of the program, the reforming program of the World Bank. In the justicial system, we have 38 milestones. We put a lot of money from RRF for these milestones. They are on their track. You have always to remember, you have to reform your justicial system in a way that will not be perceived as your will to interfere to the justicial decision. So it has some balance there that you have to be very, very careful, and we try to be, because we don't want to interfere to our justicial system. It's totally independent, of course. We're a Western country. But I think with the implementation of these reforms, you will see a huge difference in the speed. And because many times, many of us accuse our judges, I have to comment on that. Last month, more than 80 judges were expelled from the justicial system, from the decision of the judges themselves, because they were delaying to issue decisions. And it was the first time that has happened. So our own justicial system realized that speeding up the decision is a very big national bet, because at the end, the economy is being influenced a lot from that. So, and we speak, and we're trying to solve it with dignity and balance to the dependence of the justicial system, and our judges are realizing that this is something that has to be done, and they're doing their part. Not say it's easy, I'm saying it's a difficult thing, but it's underway, and I think you'll see huge improvement in this area in the years to come. So, FDIs. 2021 was the best year in the last 30 years. 2022, the first 6 months, we were 11% higher than the first 6 months of 2021. And with the rhythm we are going now, as, let's say, yesterday deal with Singapore Sovereign Fund is an FDI, we will have a record all time. Because of this conference, I have to say, FDIs and investments overall in renewable energy is a very big part of the success, because as I'm telling you again, this is the big transformation, structural transformation of our economy. This government changed everything in the environment in order to attract FDIs. The country and the public service are totally digitalized. The bureaucracy is being reduced as much as possible. The taxation is being reduced and is going to be reduced more in the next 4 years. The social security contribution, the same. The taxation in shareholders, also the same. So we're trying to establish a very transparent, secure and stable environment that will help people to decide to come and invest to our country. We are trying to explain to any investor, either local, either foreigner, that we respect other people's time and money. And as a government, we are here to help them do their vision possible and have profits. Because at the end, there's not even a single investor that seeks damages. All investors seek profits, and we are here to help them have profits. And I will close not to explain what I mean. The deal was made with ECOS, was purchasing the stocks that other investors that came to this great company in 2015 as Oaktree or Morgan Stanley, they entered to this business in 2015 and they sold yesterday. They sold with a big profit. This is very good news. I'm very happy as Minister of Development of the country when a foreign investor has profits in Greece, because then he will think again to invest in Greece, and other people in the business community that will learn that he had profits in Greece, he will think that this is a good idea to come also to invest. And this is how capitalism works. And yes, as one of the biggest friends of the United States of America, I never hide my feelings for this great democracy. I love the United States of America. I think it's the best friend Greece ever had. And I think that the best idea we had was to sign this agreement with the United States of America, of defense agreement we signed last year. I'm very happy because during my term, our relationship was accelerated in the investment field after many decades that the United States of America weren't really investing in Greece. Lots of US investments already came as we speak. Lots are on the way of coming. Almost every month we're announcing another US investment. The last news was Champ in Thessaloniki, the insurance company, and a lot are yet to come. Ameresco, I see Mr. Conde is there, a great American company from Boston that came to invest to Greece. Not only Microsoft and Pfizer, it's a lot more. And Your Excellency, our appetite is huge. Let's bring even more. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. And coming back to Mr. Mylonas, asking once again to be brief. So, Mr. Mylonas, at NBG, you have set a very ambitious target in funding of energy and infrastructure projects in the next years, in line with what we've heard from your previous statements, but also the other speakers. But given the recent development, do you consider this goal achievable, and what are the initiatives you have undertaken towards fulfilling it?
After the inspirational, visionary comments of the previous two speakers, we're coming back to simple banking, but they were great interventions. At NBG, we pride ourselves as being the energy bank of Greece. We have funded some of the largest and most symbolic investments, Alexandroupolis being one, the link with Egypt and the photovoltaica being another, and a few others which I cannot mention but will make news in the next few months. So we have a 30% market share in the investment of energy in Greece, 35% market share in the financing of renewables. So, and we keep growing. We have the strongest project finance team among the Greek banks. We have the highest capital ratios of the Greek banks. A lot of Greek banks have liquidity. You cannot lend if you cannot have capital. So we are in a good position to take advantage of the very large financing requirements that I described earlier. 60 billion total, more than 60% will go to banks, and our share will be more than our fair share as one of four banks. So there's going to be a lot of time spent at the bank on financing this transition.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mylonas. And last but not least, Mr. Manousakis, we've heard a lot. I guess the quote of the day was Greece being the Saudi Arabia. So how does IPTO contribute to this country's energy extroversion? And what do you do to accelerate its emergence as an international energy hub?
The ambassador mentioned before, it is the geography, but it is also the geopolitical conjuncture which makes it a very big opportunity for our country. Up to now, of course, we are interconnected with all our neighbors, and we are maturing and also constructing new interconnections. The ambassador mentioned before the interconnector, the electrical interconnector with Bulgaria, which will have been finalized by the first quarter of 2023. But what has happened in the last years is that we have started looking towards the Eastern Mediterranean and the Middle East. So, first of all, the Euro-Asia interconnector project, the interconnection between Greece, Cyprus and Israel, is now mature enough that has secured 657 million euros from the CEF, from the Connecting Europe facility of the European Commission. And we have agreed with them that we will be an investor and we will have at least 25% in this project, which we expect to commence in the following year. Also, we are in close cooperation with the Egyptian TSO, EETC, and the studies will also be funded by the structural funds of the European Union, because Europe now really wants energy to come from North Africa and Middle East, not to serve only the region of Southeastern Europe, but through vertical interconnectors to be transmitted to the Central Europe. We are also promoting and maturing the second interconnection with Italy of 1 gigawatt. And last but not least, we are interested to invest in the North Macedonian grid in order to materialize the positive economic aspects of the Prespa agreement. And we are in close cooperation with the government for this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Manousakis. And at this point, I'd like to thank all our speakers. It was a really insightful panel. We did learn a lot. We did gain a lot of insights. I'd like to end it on a very positive note. We understand that there is turbulence. The road ahead is bumpy. But at the end of the day, there are a lot of elements that can help Greece grow and improve and be a different country in the next 10 years. Once again, thank you very much for participating.